A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. I I really enjoyed this book. It is a historical romance set in Paris and Edinburgh. It has an incredibly diverse cast with historical accuracy. And oh, what a great love story. So it's Luz Alana and Evan, and they meet at the World's Fair in Paris, and y'all, it doesn't even matter why. I mean, it kind of matters for the story, but not for this video. They meet and they have sparks, and then they end up at a brothel separately, because, Luz is an enlightened woman. She gets to go to a brothel if she wants to go to a brothel. And the banter is so good. And not only is the banter good, but the scenes when they actually get together, oh, they succeed. They exceed expectations. Y'all, I sent quotes from these scenes to friends for inspiration. They are so spicy and so good. Whew. This is also a great example of, in my opinion, diversity done right. This is, yes, centered around a diverse cast of characters. Luz Alana is Scottish as well as Indigenous and Black from Hispaniola. Her friends, her sister, all are coming from the islands, the Caribbean, and so they are a diverse cast of characters. But even in Evan's side, super Scottish, his business partner is Indian. He has a half brother who is Indigenous and Black, and they go to a restaurant in Paris where a French man is married to a Vietnamese woman, and that is diversity done right. It is putting people who, it's not like history was just white people, y'all. Other people existed in this world, and I really appreciate it and adored the way that Adriana Herrera handled the diverse cast of characters that existed at this time. Just spectacular. I know this is the first in a series, and they have set up some really good follow-ups. Oh my gosh, not even diverse. It's not even just diverse in terms of race. There are also queer characters in this story. The layers, and I get so excited every single time I think about it because of who's going to come next in these stories and what we're going to see and how it's going to turn out. And I don't know if I can handle more spice. I mean, I can absolutely handle more spice. I want more spice. This was one of the spicier books that I read this week, so it needed to sustain me for a while. But yeah, so great. Absolutely loved. An Empty Embrace by Cyril Mezden. This is a book that I am so grateful I got to read early. It is being published later this year, and I want to just give you a little tidbit about this book. This book is a D&D inspired fantasy romance with a cast of characters. It is epic. There are three main characters, adventurers, who the story surrounds. And this book in particular follows a little bit more of Celeste, the cleric, versus Sable, the halfling, or Victor, the half-orc. If you are not familiar with D&D, that might preclude you from jumping into the world as quickly. Go search terms, people, powers. That's going to make it a lot easier to just delve into this world. It does lean heavily into that kind of understanding of fantasy. That being said, this is a fun adventure. And this book in particular just is a celebration of queer, both in terms of sexuality and in terms of gender. It is a trans masc author who created this book, and it is just, there are so many people in this book who step into their authentic selves and get validation for their authentic selves and how they live their lives. The use of pronouns is very, very considerate in this book, as well as the world's understanding of gender and gender affirming care via magic. I mean, if you can't use magic to affirm your own gender, what's the point of it? When it comes to the spice, there's a lot of sexual tension, but the only person we really get a deep dive into the intimacy of is Celeste, the cleric. And if you're familiar with that, a cleric having sex, oh my goodness, y'all. there are also vampires. There are group vampire scenes in this book. So we don't get a ton of scenes, but the scenes that we get are quite steamy. This book also sets up a sequel, a little bit more to the story. So I'm really excited to see where this potentially goes. So take a look, pre order An Empty Embrace. Most ardently, this was me joining late to Trans Rights Readathon. I don't know if I mentioned that for An Empty Embrace. I was already reading it, and then I discovered Trans Rights Readathon, which was last week. And I will be better about it for next year. But if you are looking for more diverse books in your bookshelves and specifically to add more trans authors, I just go to Trans Rights Readathon. And they had an incredible database, and I found Most Ardently, which is a Pride and Prejudice remix book, part of this whole series of classic remixes. Oh, this was such a sweet book. I read it after Powerless, so it was two YA Zero Spice books back to back, which was a lot for me, a lot of lacking spice for me, but totally worth it. I love a retelling. I think a good balance was made between holding true to the text of Pride and Prejudice, the story of Pride and Prejudice, as well as separating it to tell this new story of Oliver, who I will dead name right now, was born Elizabeth Bennet. And we see Oliver really just come into his own and start living his life with his family and with people and coming to terms with what that means. And it's a really beautiful story. It also makes a lot of sense if Darcy is queer, why he has such an awkward time at balls. That made so much sense to me. And their relationship is very interesting. I just, if you're looking for a really sweet remix to a classic story, you don't mind a lack of spice, this is a beautiful, beautiful book. Gabe Novoa has a bunch of other things in his backlog, and I cannot wait to delve further into that. But oh, it's just so sweet. Quick read, too. Very quick, very easy. Highly recommend. A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. I had read a bit of Alexis Hall before I read boyfriend material. I couldn't get into husband material. But This was on the Trans Rights Readathon list of books, and it said sexual content, so I went to my local library and I got to ebook. This is a long book. If you're looking for a light, fluffy rom-com with super sweet, super quick, this is not for you. This is an epic tale of love and loss and recovery and relationships and family and so much more. What it is not, as well, is a story of ostracizing Viola, our main character, who we never learn her dead name. We know her dead title because her brother has inherited it, and who she was is referred to often in this book, but she is never referred to as her dead title, and I have no recollection of her dead name. I don't need to get into the story, but long story short, she is reunited with her best friend who thinks she's dead. She's pretended to be dead. She was injured at Waterloo and recovered, and then just kind of let everybody think she was dead so she could become who she is and return to England as Viola. They are reunited. Justin, the Duke of Gracewood, discovers who she is, and their love story starts anew. This story of friendship into what it becomes, and it is beautiful, and it is heartbreaking, and it is sweet and endearing and just joyful to watch these two people accept their love and embrace their love and celebrate their love. What I did enjoy, you're going to be shocked by this, I enjoyed the fact that not a lot was said about their sex life. There is spice in it. It did say sexual content, and there is sexual content, but they don't talk a ton about what genitals are doing what. And you know what? That's none of your fucking business. I loved how that was handled, because so often with trans humans, well, what are your genitals doing is a question that really shouldn't be asked, or is asked at really inappropriate times. And so to protect this couple, I liked that they weren't as in-depthly described as some other scenes. There were some jokes being made. Viola made a great joke about sucking cock in the brothel. And if you read this book, you will absolutely know what I'm talking about. And I laughed out loud. So it was a joy to read this tale between these two people of being separated and then coming together as a new relationship, because you're not childhood best friends anymore. Oh my gosh, the epilogue, it just made me so happy. It was a great way to end my week and to end Trans Rights Readathon. So thank you, Alexis.